Right Honourable Alex Chernow, Chairman of the Australia-India Institute and Chancellor of the University of Melbourne, the distinguished His Excellency High Commissioner Peter Burgess, Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, Professor Dinesh Singh, Susan Elliott, and of course Dr. Kiran Martin, and of course all those who are members of the Australia-India Institute and all guests, distinguished guests gathered here, and of course the young students who we have celebrated, whose accomplishments we have celebrated this evening. I requested her to step into my constituency and try and take care of some of my children. And so she did. It's very difficult to really imagine the life of a child as he grows up in a slum. It's very difficult for even people in Delhi who have never really been through that life to imagine what it is like. You actually go into the slum and you see children with glazed eyes, so they're actually staring at nothing. There is no hope in their eyes, there is no hope in their demeanor. And they live within in an open slum. They are enslaved. Because they know that the journey from that slum to the road outside, even that journey is very difficult. Not to talk about going to university. Because each day is a challenge, each hour is a challenge. If it's the monsoon months, they can't sleep at night because the thatched roofs leak and many of the chugis are washed away. During the summer months, you suddenly have the outbreak of a fire because of the heat. And in the cold of the winter, the only way to get comfortable is to gather together the entire family in one little room, and through the transmission of the heat of one body to another, you try and deal with the cold outside. And then apart from that, to actually deal with daily chores. Those who are out of work, how do you feed your children the next day? And you had in 1971, 110 million such slum children in India. That's grew to 285 million in 2001. And presently stands at 375 million. It's mind-boggling. It's more than the entire population of the United States of America, the number of children who live in slums. And so, you're not talking about 1, 2 or 3 or some people. You're talking about a sea of humanity living in conditions which are unbearable. I'm not even talking about issues of sanitation. I'm not talking even some of the other issues that they have to deal with in their daily lives. And so, somewhere, we have to commit ourselves to reach out to them in whatever way we can, to allow them to participate and become a part of the mainstream. And that's not easy. It's not easy because governments lack the financial wherewithal as well as the political will to actually do that. It's also not easy because it's difficult to generate hope in them. They have, in a sense, and many of them have resigned to the way of life that they lead. So it's a struggle actually to reach out and to give them that hope, to give them that confidence that they are as much a part of us and that they deserve as much as any of us. We know for a fact that the concept of equality in the context of individual traits is not a concept that we fully understand, because we know for a fact that individuals with different traits can perform differently. But the one thing that every individual in the world is entitled to is equality of opportunity. Now, once you give every child that equality of opportunity, then the child is able to realize his own potential and genius and move forward. So the problem is that many of these children, and all of these children, are not given that opportunity. And what Kiran has done, that she has created the architecture to give those children that opportunity, pursuant to which you find them where they are. Now, what's really delightful today, and this is something that gives me great joy, that if you look at the number of children who came out on the stage today, at least half of them, if not more, were girls. And for me, that's something that gives me great joy. Which means that we as a community, we as a nation, are moving away from the traditional belief that girls shouldn't go out there and get educated. Because if you educate one girl, you educate really a whole family. The other day I went to my constituency, and this is a real story. I walked into a hut, and out came a girl. This was early morning, not too early, around 9:30, 10 o'clock. She came out of the hut, and I just asked her, I said, where is she going? She says, I'm going to attend class. I said, where? She said, the Delhi School of Economics. You know, they showed to me a transformation that is taking place. Children are now realizing, because of the communication revolution, that they can actually aspire to be just like anybody else. And another one of them was sitting for the IAS examination. So I'm also very delighted at the fact that, Asha, you have reached where you have, and that you want to move forward. And your dream is to get 5,000 children in the next 5 years into the university system in Delhi. And really, that's the reason why we believe that the Right to Education Act is so important for India. It's important for India because the Right to Education Act, for the first time, gives every child the constitutional right to be in school, at least till the elementary stage, till class 8. And of course, I think in 5 years' time, we'll hopefully get that right extended to children into secondary and higher secondary, so that all schooling in India will be free and quality education. That's our dream, and that's where we will reach as a nation. But what's important here is to understand that if every child has the right to education, then all these children in the slums can actually get free education. It's much easier now than it was before, because when you moved forward, there was no right to education. There was no place for these children. And now that we have that act in place, and I took a meeting of it just this afternoon as to how we are moving ahead, what the state now cannot take as a defense that it does not have the financial resources to send a child to school, or that doesn't have the financial resources to set up a neighborhood school. Because within the right to education is the concept that in every neighborhood there shall be a school. So you can actually, Kiran, and send you some of my advocate friends, if there's somebody in the way then we can actually move the court and say, you give us a school within the slum because that's our constitutional right. Because that's the neighborhood. That's the neighborhood. And the state cannot say that we shall not provide a school in the neighborhood. So that's one part of it, which will greatly help. And I think in this context, the Australia-India Institute can actually be partners in taking this forward. The second, and that's perhaps even more significant because it encapsulates the inclusive approach that the High Commissioner was talking about to economic growth. We've translated that into education. Now we say that every private school in India shall, by law, admit 25% in class 1 starting 2011. 25% children from the disadvantaged community in the locality. Which means slum dwellers, which means children who are differently abled, disadvantaged one way or the other, children belonging to the minority community. And therefore, every school in 8 years' time, because it starts from class 1 and moves on to elementary education till class 8 every year, because the class 1 goes to class 2. In 8 years, 25% of that entire school will be the house for disadvantaged children from disadvantaged communities, which will bring about a catharsis, a change. Because we believe that unless we expose our disadvantaged children into the private education sector and expose the private education sector to the disadvantaged community, we will not get a mindset that's necessary to take our nation forward. Because people have to believe, we have to break down hierarchies. We have to break down the walls of discrimination. We have to break down the walls of injustice. And one of the ways to do that is to ensure that even in the private education schooling system, 25% of children shall be from the disadvantaged communities. So that's what we need to do within the schooling sector. In the health sector, it's even more important. We started a health program in my constituency, and I'll share that with you. We're starting a health program, or we've already started it, it's been going on for 2-3 years now. Well, what we do is, we check, we have a health profile of every child in the school. And to our amazement, we found that many of the children had a weak eyesight, but they had no glasses. They had a weak hearing ability, but they had no hearing aid. And simple things like giving them glasses and hearing aid, or some of them had nutritional problems. And so checking their health profile, which is of course now all on the website, on the computer, every 6 months we go back to the children and check their health profile, and then we measure their nutritional deficiencies as well, so that we can advise the parents as to what to give them while they're at home. And we give free spectacles, free hearing aid to our children within the constituency. And I think that the Hon'ble Institute of Global Health, since you're already actually doing this program, should also look at building an architecture as to how all this can be taken forward through a push from outside. And this also can be done in the partnership that we have already forged and the launch that we have seen today. So this really, as I said, is a wonderful initiative. I congratulate the Australia-India Institute, the Hon'ble Institute of Global Health, and of course Asha for taking this forward, for forging this great partnership. And I dare say in the years to come this will move forward effectively, and will give you an opportunity to also know as to how, through your research, as to how this movement is turning out to be a success, and perhaps through your research we can replicate this not just for the urban poor in Delhi, but for the urban poor in many other parts of India. Because I think that as India grows and the growth story moves forward, there's going to be more and more migration into the cities from the rural areas because of problems of... But I think we need to move away from this concept of poverty. I think when we talk about the urban poor, I don't like the word poor. Maybe the urban unempowered. Because poverty has attributes which I dislike. The word itself is somewhat, it's unjust to call somebody poor, because it's not because of themselves that they are poor, we make them poor. They've lived in circumstances in which they don't have the possibility to reach where they have the potential to reach. So we have to empower the unempowered. And that's not just a responsibility of the government. I think it's the responsibility of civilization, of all societies, wherever they are. I know of Australia as well. There are poor people in Australia. You've got relative poverty. There are, of course, the disadvantaged in Australia as well. And anywhere in the world you find that. Of course, the definition of poor is relative from one country to another. But ultimately it's deprivation, it's not poverty. And we need to reach out to the deprived, because otherwise, as civilization moves forward, I don't think we do justice to ourselves. With those words, I thank you very much once again for inviting me here and inaugurating this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think our audience will agree that those words were really encouraging.